Awesome. Well, thanks everyone again for joining another session with us. My name's Eric Nemus from Since and Laundryworks, and I'm joined here today by Chris Schultz, who's the Director of Operations at Midwest Laundries. And we're going to talk about the systematic approach that enables rapid laundromat development. So, Chris, before we get into that, if you want to just give a quick introduction of yourself and Midwest, and then we can, hop into the questions here.
Yeah, so I'm from Midwest Laundries in Chicago. I have a background in construction. I was an electrician for about 15 years. Midwest Laundries is a licensed general and electrical contractor in the city of Chicago. So we sort of specialize in building the facilities for people on top of distributing the laundry equipment and installing it and all that sort of stuff. My family's been in laundry, give or take, for about 40 years. My grandpa started in laundry a long time ago. We didn't pass the business along through the generations. It's more, my grandfather was in it, then my dad was in it, and now my siblings and I are in it.
Awesome. So Chris, why is speed so critical in laundromat development today, and what competitive advantages does it create for you and your operators?
Yeah, so speed's really critical for a couple reasons. The first one that comes to mind is nowadays in laundry's incredibly popular. You see the TikToks and the Instagrams and the Facebooks and the YouTubes. Everybody wants the passive income. Everybody wants to have their own business. Everybody wants to start their own thing. And we're all competing for the same customers, the same locations. So when we do find that location, when we find that secret gold nugget that we've all been looking for, you don't really want to let people know that you found it. You sort of want to be able to move and move quickly before the market has a chance to respond to that. So it's just a matter of time before your competition, they could be a block away, a mile away, 2 miles away. They hear about it, and maybe that triggers a response on their end to retool their store. You don't want to compete with a retooled store. You want to compete with their old store. So you want to keep that as a secret. You want to move quickly, and you want to get open before the market has a chance to respond to your development. And the second reason is really financial. When you're doing a laundromat, the costs are pretty high, right? The equipment's expensive, leases are expensive, real estate's expensive. Whether you're buying it or leasing it, getting all new equipment, getting used equipment, retooling some equipment, you want to be able to move and get your revenue going before those loans start to come to fruition. You don't really want to be paying a lease or a mortgage or your equipment loan and not have any revenue coming in.
Awesome. And what would you say is the biggest difference between traditional development approaches and then your fast track methodology at Midwest?
Yeah, so I want to sort of throw a wrench in that there, and I don't want to say fast track. I want to say efficient development. So when you think of fast track development, you sort of think of push, push, push. And when you push, what happens? Mistakes happen. Things get more expensive with mistakes, and we don't want that. What we want to do is we want to make things extremely efficient from beginning to end. And so if we make things efficient, now the speed will just come naturally. When you race cars, they say slow is fast, because when you think slow and you move your hands slow, your car is just naturally faster. And it's the same thing with construction and development. You move efficiently, you think efficiently, and the speed just sort of comes along with that. So at Midwest Laundries, we really always try to just push to be as efficient as possible. When you go into a project, we want you to be 110% prepared for that project. We don't want to be thinking of what we need to do after we've already begun.
Yeah, and speaking of efficiency, you know, how does having a strong supplier relationship and inventory management accelerate that development process?
Oh, well, I mean, firsthand about supplier relationships. I mean, if I have a problem and it's high enough, I'll call your cell phone 24 hours a day.
Yep.
So, and that's really the key. When you're working with somebody, you want to be able to have that, make sure that they have that relationship with their suppliers that are supplying you with equipment, because when there's a problem, and there's going to be problems, there's always problems. There's no project that doesn't have problems. If someone tells you that, they're just fibbing. So when you do have that problem, you want to make sure that the people you're working with have a direct line to their suppliers to get those problems worked out as quickly as possible so that your project's not delayed and you stay on that efficient fast track into development.
Yeah, and can you actually talk to an example of or a story about a project that exceeded expectations with your efficient deployment approach?
Yeah. Well, no, you could go back to fast track.
This one was rapid, so
Yeah. So we could just talk about the project we most recently did. We opened a store about a month ago in Highland, Indiana. Um, the landlord came to us not too long ago, and the store had been closed for about give or take 6 months. And they had asked us, hey, they knew we had a store. We have a store about 2.5 miles down the road. So they said, would you be interested in opening a store in this location? We looked at it and we looked at the demographics, the past performance of the store, and we said, yeah, we'll be interested in it. So we sort of sat in our offices and made a budget and a timeline of what we thought it would take. We thought we're going to gut the whole place. It'll take about 4 months of permitting, construction, ordering equipment, installing it, and getting the staff trained up and running, all that stuff. So we put that initial 4 month timeline on it. We went out there, we looked at the location, and it turns out all the underground plumbing was no good. All the underground um, drains were no good. All the electrical needed to be changed out. So there was a lot of stuff that needed to happen that we didn't necessarily fully expect. We knew that it would take some of that stuff, but not necessarily completely square one starting from the beginning. So we got with our contractors and we didn't change the timeline. We just changed the expectations. We changed the way that the trades overlapped. We changed the way people had to work together, and we sort of just continued with our initial expectations of 4 months. Um, Long story short, that project ended up being done in about 3 months and 1 week. So we still opened 3 weeks early. And we did that because we stayed on that efficient track. We knew we had to spend a little more money and the trades had to do a little more work, but we just built that into our schedule and worked things around so that it didn't delay anything. And we ended up being 3 weeks ahead of timeline. We got in there before the rent started. So we started making money before we had to make our first payment to the landlord. And it all worked out great.
awesome. And I think you touched on a couple things here, but you mentioned earlier mistakes happen, things can go wrong. What's your approach, when something unexpected happens to get that project back on track?
Yeah, exactly. And you got to when projects have problems, you got to hit that problem head on. So whether it's a project for us or it's a project for a customer, as soon as we know about the problem, we have to do two things. We have to figure out, one, is this going to be a big problem or a little problem? A big problem is something that you maybe can't get over. Maybe the power company can't bring enough power in. Maybe the city doesn't have enough water in the area to feed a laundromat. Those are big hurdles that might ruin a project and you can't really get over it. Smaller problems are things that just might cause delays or cost a little more money. So once we figure out what that problem is, we're going to go back to that owner and we're going to tell them right away that there might be a delay, there might be extra costs, and we're going to work with them to sort of figure out the best way to go to tackle that problem. And then when we do that, say we have a little, let's just pretend the equipment's delayed. Let's say we're supposed to get equipment in 6 weeks and we just found out that there's a problem. It's going to be 12 weeks. So we have a 6 week delay on the equipment. We might not delay the whole project. What we're going to do is we're going to figure out what trades we can move around. Maybe we could put the bases down and then we could put the flooring in. Then we cover the flooring and protect it. And maybe we've done something that was supposed to happen 3 weeks after equipment. Now it's happening before equipment. But we've adjusted the timeline to make sure that we're still sticking to our initial track as closely as possible. So problems are inevitable, but it's really about how you approach it and how you attack it.
Yeah, and with that, how do you help your clients understand when it's worth investing more upfront to accelerate their timeline?
The number one way we think you should accelerate your timeline with investment is just hiring reputable contractors and working with reputable people. There's countless projects we've worked on where, your wife's cousin's neighbor is going to be the carpenter on the project. And, he's going to do it after work. He's going to do it on the side because it's a little bit cheaper. And while that's good, I mean, cheaper could be okay. But, if you hire a reputable company, they could get it done quicker and more efficiently. And that's what we strive for. We want reputable people in there doing the project the way you need it done. And that's really the important investment, is just the investment in people, the investment in the project, to make sure that everything stays on track.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about being fast, efficient, rapid, but what are some of the more common mistakes that you see developers make that will slow down a project?
The number one mistake we see all the time is people don't go to the municipality or the city to get permission to do the project before they do the project. You know, you're doing electrical, you're doing plumbing, you're doing carpentry. These inspectors, these commissioners, they've seen all this before. This isn't new stuff. So when you go in there and you think I'm not going to pull a permit because I'm only doing a little electrical, or I'm only doing a little plumbing. Well, that all it takes is for an inspector to drive by, see you're doing something, they see no permit in the window, and they're going to put that big red stop work order on your door. And as soon as that happens, your project is now at the mercy of that person. You know, they could decide they don't like it, and they're going to review your paperwork as slow as possible, and your project, you could be delayed for months, and then after you're delayed, they could put your project under the microscope. Whereas if you went to them first, explained what you were doing, at least they know about it. They know you're upfront. They know you're honest. Um, and yeah, they certainly give you an easier time. So my advice there would be to go to the city. I know it's uncomfortable. You may have never talked to a building inspector before. You may have never talked to a commissioner before, but they're just regular people. I mean, you don't gotta be scared of them. Just tell them exactly what you're doing, and they'll tell you the best way to proceed with that. And then I think the other way we see big delays is, like we said, with using poor contracting or poor construction work, and people just sit around waiting for contractors to come in.
Yep, absolutely. And when you're moving at an accelerated pace, how do you ensure that quality doesn't suffer?
Yeah, so when we're moving at that accelerated pace, we want to remember that what we're aiming for is an efficient pace. We want to make sure that we're sending the right people to do the right job, and we're giving them enough time to do their job. If we schedule that install for 2 weeks and the client comes back and says, "Can you do it in a week and a half?" It's important not to go push, push, push and push your labor to work 10 to 12-hour days and tell them, "Hey, you got to be done with this by Wednesday," when it might be a real unrealistic expectation to get it done by Wednesday. You got to be realistic with yourself. You got to be realistic with your guys, because at the end of the day, they're going to feel pressure as employees to try to get it done by that date, and they might make mistakes that they're not going to tell you about. So when we're moving at that fast pace, it's important for the owner of the store, the distributor, visit there every day, make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, make sure they're putting the proper amount of labor on the job, and not just really just trying to slam it in. Because when you do that, mistakes start to happen, quality starts to slip, and you might be on track, but then you're going to pay for it down the road.
And there's multiple ways to go about store development, but what should someone know before deciding if a fast track development is right for their project specifically?
I think fast track development's for everybody. I mean, I don't know anyone who said, "I want this project to take as long as possible," because that's just painful. I mean, no one wants to be under construction. No one wants bills coming in before they're ready for them. So I think everybody should start every project in mind with, this is a realistic timeline for this project. These are the people I'm going to work with, and I want to make sure I'm going to stick to that timeline. Um, my advice to everybody who does any project is, if you don't have a general contractor that's there every single day, you have to try to be there every single day. Certainly, doing general contracting in the past, if I have a busy week and I can't make it there for 3, 4, 5 days, when I come there after those 3, 4, 5 days, something is going to be wrong. And it's not because they didn't have the information or they didn't know what they were doing. It's just because, that's there's many layers between the general contractor, and then you have your plumbers, and then you have your plumbers employees, and then you have maybe an apprentice who works for the plumber, and maybe they didn't get the memo. So you have to be there. It's your responsibility to keep an eye on your project. And yeah, I think everybody should aim for that.
Absolutely. And really, to end it with the questions, looking ahead, how do you see laundromat development evolving, and what trends are really driving the industry with that?
I think laundromat development is evolving the same way construction is evolving. So everything's going to prefabrication, more DIY stuff, more UL certified stuff that you can put in as an owner. You know, if you can turn a wrench, maybe you can install your bulkheads yourself and have your plumber just bring the the electric and the plumbing to the bulkheads. Um, Maybe they'll start doing that with something like water heaters, where you just slam in the assembly and have your plumber connect to the assembly. I think it's going the way of more DIY, more, how can we get this done quicker? How can we get it done with equivalent quality but more efficiently? Um, yeah, and I think just construction as a whole is going that direction.
Awesome. Well, Chris, you've been a great partner of ours, and we appreciate you spending time with us here today. We know there's a lot going on. We've got a couple minutes. I will open it up for a couple questions, but thank you so much for spending time with us. And, if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them here. So,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So she asked, how do you know if the plumbing is bad? Before you even sign the lease, before you go into the space, bring a plumber with you. Spend the $1,500, $2,000, whatever. He'll run a camera all the way from every clean out all the way to the sewer, the main sewer in the street. You want to make sure you have a complete view of the entire sewer that you're about to, are you purchasing it or like, yeah. So if you're purchasing it, you want to know what you're purchasing. It won't be a deal breaker, but you definitely want to know if you have a cracked pipe before you go into construction. That's what we had. So not only was the underground filled with coins and dilapidated, but also the pipe was cracked where it connects to the main sewer. So it was a ticking time bomb. It was only a matter of time before we had so much buildup in there that we would have had to close the store and fix it anyways.
all right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We'll be here at our booth. Chris is walking around. Feel free to bug him if you have any other questions. But thank you guys, and thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Eric.